think that sometimes compromise, especially in the business world, has a little bit of a negative connotation. I don't want to think that in this manner, right? In this
Right.
context, compromise means there's some give and take. And we say this all the time, that relationships are not 50-50. Sometimes you're going to have your up days. Sometimes I'm going to have my down days. And then the opposite is true. So we need to recognize those times and then be willing to give up a little bit of my goodness to my partner so that way she or he can feel better about themselves.
That's right. Because not everything's going to be a black and white answer, and you're going to have to compromise in order to be successful.
Yeah.
And it bleeds into trust, which is one of the biggest layers of the foundation in any relationship. And as I think you had said before, it takes years to build it, but seconds to break trust.
For sure.
Hello, everybody. This is Brittney and Byron, and you're listening to Dirty Laundry with B&B, a podcast about real, relatable relationships.
Transparency at its finest. We air it out and clear it up, offering couples and those seeking healthy relationships a safe, inclusive space to open the vents and find resolve.
Hello, Dirty Laundry listeners.
What's up, people?
Happy New Year. Happy 2025. Let's go.
Yeah, it's another one, ladies and gentlemen. So excited for a brand new year, a brand new day, a brand new opportunity to build new relationships, get stronger with real, relatable relationships. Let's go.
Right. That's right. Here with the Wilsons, right?
Yeah,
Where we
there it
air
is.
out dirty laundry. We talk about all things that are real. And today we are going to talk about foundation, which is perfect because we're going into a new year. And a lot of you make new resolutions and want to change things in that new year. And why not? It's a great time too. We're not against resolutions. We just don't really make them. We don't feel like you have to start anything on January 1st.
Yeah, and listen, if resolutions work for you, then have at it. It's just something that we have grown away from only because we knew that it started bringing us a little bit of anxiety and overthinking when we like to just live life naturally and allow things just to happen as they should. So we do like to develop goals and just new habits that kind of help us work through some of our challenges in our relationship. But as far as like resolutions, we try to get away from that specifically.
I agree. And I think that at the new year, what we do is, and if you listen to our last episode, you know, we've kind of look back at 365 days, which is a perfect time to do that and reflect. And today we really want to kind of emphasize and talk about foundations within your relationship, because you could be married like us for 15 years and need to do some readjustments. I know, 15 years.
God.
I know. Like, we're like seasoned.
I'm just trying to tell you, I got that good seasoning too, boy. I'm trying
Dude.
to tell you, yeah, you know what I mean?
Dude, we're a little seasoned out here, y'all,
Yeah.
okay? But no, for those of you that are in new relationships or just building a new relationship, foundation is key. And so we want to just kind of emphasize that and talk about, you know, how to build a strong foundation, what that includes, and then how to keep that foundation growing.
Yeah. And then keep in mind that what we're providing you is based on our relationship. So if you find that there are pieces and parts that don't work for you, then find out what does work for you. But we just want to share some of the tools that we utilize in order to make our relationship stay strong and sturdy, hence the name Foundation.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, an easy one, and we say it every single episode, when it comes to a foundation, you have to have communication. And it's easy to miss that step in your dating when you're kind of in that lust stage, in that L stage, because you're communicating, but you're learning that person.
Yeah.
When you have a strong foundation on communication, though, you've already talked about issues early on to build that. And sometimes what happens in a relationship is you didn't talk about those things, those hard conversations. And now you're in a funk where you don't know how to communicate those type of problems because we failed to create a strong communication baseline, if that makes sense.
No, it does make sense. It makes total sense. I think that communication is one of the most difficult things that you can do, period. You know, even thinking about like being in school early on when you're forced to go in front of the class and introduce yourself. Think about how your palms got sweaty, knees deep on spaghetti. I'm sorry, my bad. Got into a little Eminem. But think about that. Think about how nervous you were and how you started shaking a little bit and your heart was pounding. Those feelings don't go away over time. And so when you're thinking about things that really matter, so rewind again, when you're in front of that class, it doesn't really matter. If you fail when you're introducing yourself, you might get laughed at or whatever, but you keep it moving. In a relationship, that's critical. communication really is vital and it matters. So it makes things even more difficult for you. So yes, to your point, I think it is very important that you introduce communication and you kind of train those skills early in your relationship.
Absolutely. And I think communication involves even fighting. Sometimes when you have your first fight in a relationship, it's really scary. Like, you're like, is this person going to get really angry? Do they know? And it's a great time to set a foundation of how we're going to fight. If one person is upset, are they going to be the person that needs to take a break? Are we going to sit like me and we're going to talk it out and we're going to work it out? Those are those opportunities to build that strong foundation. Say, this is how we're going to fight. And this is how we're going to move on.
Yeah. I think fighting it's a good thing. And let me explain why that is. We've talked about this in a couple episodes before about if you're fighting, that means that you're talking or you're communicating, right? So maybe it's not in the way that you should be, but let's talk about why you're fighting, right? But so the importance is that you're actually trying to communicate, but we need to figure out how to do that in an effective manner. So fighting isn't something to run away from. Conflict isn't something to run away from. Let's form a way for us to communicate through those challenges in a way that makes a positive change in our relationship.
Yes. And I will say foundationally, this was one of the hardest things that Byron and I had to work through when we were dating, because neither of us really had good examples of how to communicate properly and in an effective manner,
or even that you should communicate.
Exactly.
Like for me, I didn't feel like I should communicate. And it was erroneous for me to think that, because for you, I felt like you needed to be reading my mind. You know me, even at the age of whatever age we were when we started
sometimes
dating.
we still get that way though.
Yeah, so I don't, it's unfair to you for me to expect that you read my mind. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, I agree. So sometimes early on in a relationship, is this even something we need to be discussing? Well, most often it is. If it's a problem for your teammate, then yeah, it's something that you should be talking about.
Definitely. And I think too, whenever, like for us going through fighting, it took us a long time to understand that like, you don't have to attack that person in communication. You don't have to win the argument or whatever it is you're trying to communicate.
Yeah.
The key here, and this is such a good learning point, and it still is for us, is to understand and learn compromise. And it's really hard to do that because when you're compromising, you are sometimes taking a piece that you may not agree with to say, you know what, it's worth it because it's for your well-being as well. And in order for us to both have a healthy and happy relationship, this is what it looks like.
Yeah. And I think that sometimes compromise, especially in the business world, has a little bit of a negative connotation. I don't want to think that in this manner, right? In this context, compromise means there's some give and take. And we say this all the time, that relationships are not 50-50. Sometimes you're going to have your up days. Sometimes I'm going to have my down days. And then the opposite is true. So we need to recognize those times and then be willing to give up a little bit of my goodness to my partner so that way she or he can feel better about themselves.
That's right. Because not everything's going to be a black and white answer, and you're going to have to compromise in order to be successful.
Yeah.
And it bleeds into trust, which is one of the biggest layers of the foundation in any relationship. And as I think you had said before, it takes years to build it, but seconds to break trust.
For sure.
And communication bleeds right into that, because when you're going into talking about having to compromise, I have to trust that you love me and that, I'm putting my well-being in your hands and that you have my best interest. And that's not easy for everyone. And sometimes we say we trust someone, but do we actually trust them? Do you truly trust them enough to say, you know what? They have my best interest. I know they do.
Yeah. In order to have effective communication, you have to be willing to be vulnerable. In order to be vulnerable, you have to have trust, right? That's how those things correlate. And so for me growing up, I felt like when I did communicate, the words that I used, people used them against me. I felt like. And so, especially in relationships. And so when Brittney and I started dating, I was kind of closed off. I was kind of surface level when it came to talking about things. My goal and the things that I was really focused on was just taking care of you and making you feel good about yourself and taking you out and making sure that you had a good time. But it was rare that we talked about the deep inner workings of ourselves. right?
Yeah.
Early in our relationship, and things that I wanted, things that I valued, things that I envisioned in a wife in the future. I didn't talk about those things because I didn't necessarily trust you enough to provide you with that information early in our relationship. But over time, we did start to garner trust
Yeah.
within one another. And so that afforded us an opportunity or a gateway to be vulnerable when it comes to communication.
Absolutely. And we dated so young that I don't know
Yeah.
that marriage and those type of things were necessarily a reality at that moment.
I mean,
So we had to.
for some of us, it ain't a reality, but for others, it was.
I mean, yeah, I always knew I was going to get married. I didn't know that when I started dating Byron, I didn't think at the age of 16 that he would be the person I would marry. I just didn't have that type of forward thinking. I knew that like I had a lot of goals in mind. So foundationally, I think we missed the mark a little bit. We had strong foundation, but we had to readjust that foundation later on in life, like once we got older.
Yeah. I'm sorry if I cut you off.
It's okay, go ahead.
But you got me excited there a little bit because I'm noticing that I have to take ownership of a lot of that. And I think a lot of it was because...
Y'all hear that? Okay, y'all heard that?
Well, you know what I'm saying? It's a new year, new me. Well, I got to take ownership in some of that because of, we talked about it before, just our experiences when it comes to, you know, a relationship, a romantic relationship. Being married to someone wasn't a thought of mine. You know, I remember like vividly thinking, this is all coming up right now, y'all. So congratulations. Y'all get to experience the mind of me in the spirit of moment. But I remember vividly saying that I do not want a wife. I want my kids and I want to raise my children. I remember that.
You just deleted me right out the scene.
Like it was before I even like started dating you or I even knew who you were. I just knew that's what I wanted as a kid because I wanted to be able to nurture and provide for my children. I felt like maybe that was something that I was lacking and I wanted to be able to do that for my kids. I didn't ever think about who was going to help me in that. And so when we started dating, I didn't think about, man, how much of an impact a partner can be in achieving my goal of taking care and nurturing my children. And so I thank you for that. I think that you've opened my eyes a lot in regards to the importance of having someone next to you achieving, you know, the goal of taking care of and nurturing positively your children.
Yes, definitely.
Sorry.
That. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, no doubt. Thanks for listening.
That's right. And, you know, with trust, there also foundationally, you have to have respect for one another. You have to respect the person that you're with and they have to respect you as well. You know, that's part of the deal, right?
Yeah. Respect is hard because it's not one singular act to show or prove that you respect someone because you have to respect all of them.
Yeah.
And all of them is very complex. Like I can respect your beliefs. I can respect your religion. I can respect your thoughts. I can respect your actions. I can respect, there's a lot of different things that I can respect. I can respect your time. I think that for us, the time, I think, is the hardest part because there are things that you want to achieve or do within a certain amount of time. And, you know, and I also want to take that time to do what I want to do, but there's not enough time in the day for us to do what we want to do. You feel what I'm saying? So that's been very difficult, you know, being able to respect someone else's need for time to themselves or time to gather their thoughts or time to go take a self-care day. That's been very difficult for us in recent days.
Yes, agree.
But yeah, I think, respect is a hard one. So when we're talking about respect, what do you think? Well,
I wanted to say this too. It may not be easy to pinpoint, but we all can think of a couple that we know whose spouse doesn't respect them. We've all seen that example. And whether that means, hey, I would prefer you to be home at this time and they just disrespect that or, you know, we've all seen that. We've all seen couples that talk really harshly to each other in a very disrespectful way where it really dampens the ability to trust them or the ability to respect them because now they're speaking to you in a disrespectful way. And now you in turn, it's really hard to be respectful to someone that's speaking to you. So foundationally, I think it requires you to set some boundaries. Like, hey, if this is how you're going to be, then maybe one, you don't need to be with him. But two, you know, there's got to be some kind of boundary. Like, this isn't going to work for me.
Yeah.
Or it is going to work. Or however that looks in your relationship.
For sure. Respect, too, is like there's always that line of you have to earn my respect. And I get it when you're at school and there's an adult and, you know, you feel like they should earn your respect also as a student, or someone that's, at the store, and they hold the door for you, they immediately have earned your respect because they did something nice for you. But in a relationship, if you decide that that's your person, if you choose that that's your person, it's almost like you got to start at 100.
Yeah,
You feel
you're
me?
right.
Like, okay, you have my 100% respect. Now it's on your own. It's on you now to start losing my respect.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right. Whether that means you're dishonest or you're, there's other things that can probably go into that, but yeah.
Yeah. And then that's hard because the same is true, with other facets. But I think that with respect, it's so critical that you respect your partner and their wishes, and it's just hard, man. I mean, I'm so at a loss of words because respect, I feel like, can be its own series of episodes.
True.
Let alone this little segment here on Foundation. But yeah, the bottom line is you got to start at 100 with your partner and let them know straight up, hey, here's my level of respect for you. I respect you to the moon, and it's on you to lose that respect via your actions. And the only way that they can regain and or earn or keep your respect is that you vocalize or communicate what you need in order to keep that respect on 100.
Which is full circle because it brings us right back to communication again.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Communicating those things, those boundaries.
Yeah, communication is interwoven into all of the things that we'll talk about on any podcast episode that we have. It's so true. So true.
And I had read something before that said, when you're going to have a partner that, you have a strong foundation, make sure that you're with someone that is a competent adult. And I kind of laughed when I read that, like, really, a competent adult?
Yeah.
Like, surely they are, but like, it's so true. If you want foundational things in your relationship, they do. I mean, they have to have a job. If you want them to be financially stable in your house, they have to have a job. They have to be able to wash their laundry. And I kind of laughed about being a competent adult, but it matters. And it really matters when you bring children into the fold.
Yeah.
Because now here you are, you didn't, make a commitment to a person that is competent, and you're trying to depend on them. You're trying to trust them. You're trying to find them, this is disrespectful. Now you're not helping. So although it's kind of laughable, it's very true.
Yeah. I think what you're saying as far as competence, and correct me if I'm wrong, when you're talking about competence in a relationship, is almost synonymous with emotional intelligence.
Yes.
Right. So it's not necessarily, we're not talking about if they're smart or they got a whatever on the SAT or ACT. We're talking about their ability to read a room and respond accordingly. Right. And so in a romantic relationship, that's going to require a lot of emotional intelligence for me to see that, okay, Brittney's coming home. She didn't say hello. She went right upstairs. Something's wrong with her. I'm going to go see if she's okay and if she needs anything, as opposed to like, oh, shoot, she came in, she did her thing. Okay, I'm sure she's fine. Like, no, we're going to get rid of the assumptions and we're going to utilize our emotional intelligence. And I think that's what you're talking about, right?
And a bit, like, obviously they need to be competent in other, aspects as well. But definitely emotional intelligence goes into that piece, because usually a competent adult does have to have some type of emotional intelligence.
Yeah, I think because a lot of times in our podcast, we try to generalize a lot of things because we have a lot of experience. However, our experience is not your experience. It's not our listeners' experience. There's thousands of couples out there who have experienced something totally different. And I'm saying that only because, for instance, you have mentioned financially responsible. Like, that can mean something totally different to somebody else in another relationship. Someone has to have a job. Well, that's not necessarily true. Somebody could have, received a huge lump of money so we're not working, but we still need to be fiscally responsible, right? So that is true. But what I'm trying to say is, whatever your foundation is, whatever these values are for you, you got to figure it out. 100% communication is always going to be one of them, right? Competence, absolutely true. But our definition of what competence means isn't yours, but you've got to figure out what that is.
Agree. And that was just one example. You nailed that, because yes, competent adult, however that looks for you, that may be different for everyone.
100.
And then another foundational piece is growing together. And we hear people say that all the time. Oh, they just grew apart. We've all heard that comment, right? That's a foundational piece in growth. And I say growth in the sense of growing as an individual, growing as a couple, you have to fulfill both because you're not going to grow as a couple if you don't grow individually as well. And growth can look different individually. There are things in the relationship that I need to work on, and then there's things in the relationship that you have to work on. But it's an individual piece.
Hold on now.
Oh, okay, you take it for
What other thing?
Well, that's another episode. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, speaking truth into life. Nah.
But it's just important. Growth is important, and taking a step back and allowing the person the grace to grow is important. I find myself trying to do certain things. I'm trying to think of an example right now. But like maybe be on my phone less is one. Be on my phone less especially when my children are around. Yeah. And I have to really, really think about it. And I say that because I need to be given that grace when I don't meet the mark, right? So yes, that's just, I just need to be given that grace.
Yeah, and I'll do my best to provide you with that grace, okay, as you continue to grow.
But no, that's just for anybody, like anything that you need to grow in, you do need some grace from your partner as well. Yeah. But you do have to grow together. So there's no resentment. There's going to be times where you're just kind of chilling and the other person is really putting in the heavy lifting of the relationship. And it's going to be like that sometimes. Yeah. And you have to just grow together.
Yeah. And so you got to communicate when those times are too. And I think that I like how you talked about the importance of individual growth is going to foster growth within your relationship, but it can also foster a little bit of resentment. So to your point, you got to be able to discuss that with your partner. You got to talk about how you want to grow and what your goals are and what you want to achieve within that specific time frame, and then see if that works with your partner. And I think that we do a good job of that. There'll be conferences that we'll talk about going to, or classes that we want to attend, or there's a meeting that we need to go that might run long, so it might run into where the children had to be picked up from school. We talk about those things, I think, right? So,
absolutely.
Okay. Just making sure we
definitely talk about those things.
Yeah, we talk about those things to make sure you're good, right? And it's not like I'm checking in and I'm asking mommy for permission, but I think that is good to set a level of expectation. Okay, Byron's going to be late home tonight, so this is what I got to do for dinner. You feel what I'm saying?
Yes, absolutely. No, I think it's important. And that comes with respect too, right? Because if you're going to expect someone to take that heavy lifting, then you need to let them know. Because what can happen in that is that person starts to do their own thing. And then I'm feeling left out or resented or, lack thereof, communication. And so I think it's important, but what can happen there is we start growing our separate ways. Now you are out and you did a conference and you met a group of people and you're going to do this new thing. And here I am like, well, we didn't even talk about this. Yeah. And here you are, we meet every Saturday and Sunday. So now our weekends are booked. And, next thing you know, you've really created a gap between your relationship and what you're doing individually. And that does not mean that I am saying, don't do things individually, because I am a big proponent of doing individual growth. And however that looks to you, I know for like Byron, he's really been wanting to volunteer at church. We just moved here and trying to get more involved. And that doesn't mean that he's leaving me out, but there are things like men's things that he wants to do that I'm just not going to be a part of. Yeah. I'm okay with that. But if you started to step away and maybe not communicate those things to me, it would really feel like I wasn't a part of your life and you didn't want me to be involved. Yeah. And so it has to grow together. There has to be that communication, that full circle of respect.
So let's talk about how that can become sticky. So if I did want to participate in, church-related activities or men's groups and things of that nature without communicating those things with you, and then you come at me like that, you start asking those questions, well, why aren't you doing this and why aren't you doing that? Then I'm thinking like, okay, why are you being so jelly? Like, why are you jealous about me going to do X, Y, and Z? And then you get upset. Like, it just becomes this big snowball effect of emotions and anger and frustration and confusion that could have been taken care of had we just communicated that in the first place.
Absolutely. Because had you said like, hey, every Thursday and Tuesday, I have to go over here and volunteer. So it's like already set in stone. And, I'm a calendar girl, so it's just put it in the calendar and then we'll be good. But you know what I'm saying? It's just taken care of. So it's a lot of growth we talk about every single piece of this foundation. Growth could be a whole episode in itself.
No doubt.
As well.
Yeah.
Because we're constantly growing.
No doubt. Man, so as you were doing this, I thought about guardrails. So like with growth, you want to offer grace, just like Brittney has said, like, just like you said, grace is so important. One, I got to give myself grace if I'm not achieving or obtaining those goals that I set for myself to grow.
That's right.
But then also I need some space for me to actually go after those things. So I appreciate that grace. But then also I have to provide myself with guardrails because I don't want all of that time spent on trying to grow spilling over into other parts of my life that also need to grow. So like if my relationship with you, babe, like I feel like we need to date more. Like we haven't been able to date as much as we usually do. And I think a lot of that is because of the things we're trying to achieve on our own time, right? As we're trying to grow. So we've got to figure out a way to put margins and our guardrails on those things. So that way it doesn't go spill over into other parts of our life that also need fostering and time and nurturing.
Right. So how do you do that? Do you write it down? Are you journaling? Are you putting it on? Like, how do you ensure that, you are giving each area that you need the proper amount of attention?
Yeah, for me, I like to write my goals down. So I have a to-do list that I use and I write down everything that I need to get accomplished. That means even if it's tactical, meaning things that can be done within a day or two, or strategic, something I want to get done within the year, I write it all down and I literally have boxes next to it that help me check them off. And it makes me feel accomplished when I can check those things off. That did not used to be me, by the way. But over time, I've really learned to value checking things off of my blocks. So
I'm still stuck on the fact you use tactical because y'all know he's in the military, right?
No, I think this is a good way to formulate it in my mind is that these are things that need to be done quickly. And these are things that I would like to do or my aloof goals that I want to do on down the road. So that's what really helps me. Then also just kind of bouncing it off you. So I'll say like, hey, babe, there's this new certification that I want to reach in or do. What are your thoughts on it? And you'll just keep it real. Like, hey, it's not enough time. You coaching basketball, you going to work, you doing this with Jude on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Jonah has football on the weekends. You don't have time to do all of that. And I'm like, okay, yeah, you right.
Well, first of all, let me just say Byron's the king of overloading the amount of things he wants to accomplish. Usually you get it done somehow, some way, but I'm like, babe, I have to be not the Debbie Downer, the realist though. I'm like, you can't do that because you're going to spread yourself too thin.
The thing is that you can do it.
Okay, yes,
but
right.
The result is that I'll spread myself too thin.
Yeah, and then there's a backlash to that, right? They're frustrated and so, that's why you have a partner that respects you.
Can we? So I like this. I think this is a great part to kind of move into the conclusion of this episode. That is the reason why we're talking about foundation.
That's right.
Because it's kind of a reset. We've been running so fast these past few years. And now God has blessed us with an opportunity to kind of take a step back. And I don't want to do what you're talking about.
Right.
I don't want to fill up all of that space with a whole bunch of go-dos, especially when we have an opportunity to make ourselves better.
Yes.
So that's why we're talking about foundation. What does foundation mean to you? Where is it that you need to establish yourself as an individual and with your partner to create a strong foundation to create and or build your everlasting home on top of?
That's right. Because that's the key, right? The key is to have a strong foundation. So if anything else goes wrong, you always have that foundation to lean on.
Yeah.
There's no cracks in it. It's ready to go. It's like, okay, well, that didn't work out, but at least we still have each other. We still can communicate. We still have trust. And that's what our relationship should be built on.
No doubt. So for our foundation, what do we talk about? We're talking about communication.
Trust.
That was a huge one.
Respect.
Yeah, mutual respect. That's key. You got to make sure that you give each other respect. And then growth.
Yes.
Yeah, and growth. So growth comes with grace and guardrails. Man, that's fire. I need to write that down.
That's right. You should write it down too, y'all.
Hey, thank y'all so much as usual to just, be here among us, man. It's a new year, 2025, here talking about foundation. Please figure out what your values are, what your goals are for the year 2025 and go out there and achieve it. You can do it. It's not easy, but it can be done and we can do hard things. So please subscribe, find us on all your socials. We have a lot going on right now. It's kind of discombobulated, if that's even a word anymore, but we're going to make it work.
That's right. And you can catch us now on real_relatable_Wilsons on Instagram.
Yeah.
And you can still, if you want to watch our podcast, we're still on YouTube. All the links are below. We post them on everything. So please tune in. We appreciate our avid listeners. And, we just hope to reach somebody out there that has things that they're going through and need some advice. We are not professionals, but we're here just to tell you our experiences.
100%. So without further ado, be blessed, be you, just be, we out.
I'm blessed to be me. I'm so blessed to be